In the early morning light spilling across the broad stone courtyard of Buckingham Palace, a scene unfolded that could have been pulled straight from a movie about clashing values. Tourists milled about, cameras clicking as they marveled at the royal guards, those stoic figures in their scarlet tunics and towering bearskin hats, standing like living statues of Britain's centuries-old traditions. Most visitors kept a respectful distance, aware that these soldiers weren't just props for photos but symbols of honor, duty, and sacrifice. Yet amid the chatter and the distant rumble of London traffic, one voice cut through the calm, a brash, booming American accent belonging to a tall, broad-shouldered man in a leather jacket and faded jeans. He strutted into the courtyard with the swagger of someone who thought the world bent to his whims, loudly griping about the coffee line and sneering at how carefully everyone avoided the guards. To him, their silence was a challenge, their discipline a joke to be poked at. He thrived on the discomfort he caused, rolling his shoulders as if itching for a fight, oblivious to the quiet figure watching from the sidelines. That figure was Lawrence Larry Hayes, a British veteran in his late 50s, leaning against a low wall in a plain brown jacket adorned with subtle military patches. With his cropped hair and a faint scar tracing his temple, Larry carried the air of someone who'd seen real battles, not the petty provocations this tourist was dishing out. He'd come to the palace not to make a scene, but to reminisce, to feel the echoes of his own days as a young recruit drilling on those same grounds. The guard's unwavering stance stirred memories of honor and service, values he'd carried through multiple deployments overseas. But as the Americans' taunts grew louder, mocking the guards with a derisive laugh and daring them to flinch, Larry's sharp eyes narrowed. He recognized the type, trouble wrapped in arrogance, and felt a quiet unease settle in. Here was a man who saw tradition as something to trample, unaware that discipline, like Larry's, could rise to meet disrespect head-on. What started as a typical tourist day was about to become a lesson in the power of restraint over recklessness, one neither the American nor the onlookers would soon forget. Under the soft glow of a London morning, the courtyard of Buckingham Palace buzzed with tourists, snapping photos of the royal guards, their red tunics and bearskin hats a testament to centuries of steadfast tradition. Amid the hum of voices and the occasional clatter of horse-drawn carriages, one man stood apart, not for his noise but for his quiet presence. Lawrence Larry Hayes, a British veteran in his late 50s, leaned against a low wall, his plain brown jacket bearing faint military patches that whispered of a life shaped by service. With close cropped hair and a scar etched on his temple, he carried the calm of someone who'd faced chaos and come out the other side. Larry hadn't come to confront anyone. He was there to reflect, to revisit the palace grounds where he'd once drilled as a young recruit. The guard's silent duty stirred memories of his own deployments overseas, years of discipline hammered into him by drill sergeants who taught him to weigh every move. But as he watched, a storm brewed in the form of a loud American tourist, all swagger and sneer, mocking the guards with a voice that echoed across the stone plaza. Larry's sharp eyes tracked the man's every step, spotting trouble as clearly as he'd once spotted threats in war zones. The American's taunts grew bolder, his laughter a jab at the guard's stillness, and Larry felt the hairs on his neck rise. He'd known men like this, brash, reckless, feeding off tension, and he knew where it could lead. Yet his instinct wasn't to charge in, it was to wait, to let the situation unfold unless it crossed a line. That line came when the American's gaze shifted, locking onto Larry with a smirk, daring him to react. "Got a problem, old man?" the tourist barked, closing the distance. Larry's hands stayed loose at his sides, his heart steady as he replied, "Just don't disrespect the guards." His voice was low, measured, a soldier's restraint, not weakness. He didn't want to fight, but his years of training whispered that if push came to shove, he'd be ready. In that moment, Larry's calm resolve stood like a rock against the tide, a quiet force that would soon prove stronger than the American's bluster, turning a day of reflection into one of action. The air in Buckingham Palace's courtyard thickened with tension as the morning sun cast long shadows across the stone plaza. Tourists, clutching cameras and murmuring in awe, had been soaking in the sight of the royal guards. Those iconic figures in scarlet tunics and towering bearskin hats, standing as silent sentinels of tradition. But the calm shattered when a brash American tourist, all leather jacket and swagger, turned his loud mockery into a dangerous game. He'd been taunting the guards, laughing at their stillness, his voice booming over the hum of London traffic and the clop of passing carriages. Most onlookers shook their heads and edged away, sensing trouble. But Larry Hayes, a British veteran in his late 50s, watched with a soldier's keen eye from his spot by a low wall. Clad in a plain brown jacket with faint military patches, Larry had come to reminisce, not to fight. Yet the Americans' escalating antics pulled him into the fray. The tipping point came when the tourist, fueled by adrenaline and a crowd's reluctant attention, locked eyes with Larry, sneering as if daring him to speak. "Got a problem, old man?" he spat, striding over with a smirk. Larry, calm and steady, replied, "Just don't disrespect the guards." His voice a quiet anchor in the storm. But the American wasn't done. He pivoted, feinting a swing at the nearest guard as if to tap his hat, an act that made the crowd gasp. Then whirled back, aiming a sudden punch at Larry's torso. The blow landed, sending Larry stumbling a half step. But years of training snapped awake inside him. Cameras zoomed in, tourists froze, and the guard remained a statue, bound by protocol unless the monarchy itself was threatened. The American, lips curled in a sneer, advanced again, goading, "Come on, fight back, old man." But Larry exhaled, measuring the distance like he'd done in countless drills. As the tourist swung a wild right hook at his head, Larry ducked, letting the fist sail past, then moved like lightning. In a swift, controlled motion, he stepped behind the man, locked his arm in a grip honed by muscle memory, and twisted. "Easy," Larry said, voice low but firm, tightening just enough to immobilize without breaking anything. The American roared, "Get off me!" thrashing against a hold he couldn't budge. His anger no match for Larry's practice technique. The crowd gasped at the sudden shift, murmurs rippling. "Who's that guy?" "A veteran." For a heartbeat, the tourist broke free, landing an elbow to Larry's ribs. But Larry sucked in the pain and struck back with precision. Catching the man's wrist, he used his momentum to flip him onto the pavement with a dull thud. The American lay stunned, the fight drained out of him, while Larry stood ready, chest heaving but eyes focused. A testament to discipline over chaos in a moment that left the courtyard breathless. As the dust settled on the stone courtyard of Buckingham Palace, the morning's chaos gave way to a quieter reckoning. The royal guards, clad in their scarlet tunics and bearskin hats, stood as unflinching as ever, their silence a stark contrast to the uproar that had just unfolded. Moments earlier, a brash American tourist in a leather jacket had turned a peaceful scene into a battleground, throwing a punch at Larry Hayes, a British veteran in his late 50s who'd stepped in to shield the guard's dignity. Larry, with his plain brown jacket and military patches, had subdued the man with a swift, disciplined takedown, flipping him onto the pavement after a tense scuffle that left the crowd gasping. Now, as the American scrambled to his feet, his bravado faltered under the weight of what came next. A stern voice sliced through the hush. "Stop right there!" As two British police officers, known as bobbies, strode in, one hand on a baton, their presence a signal that justice was at hand. The tourist froze, his wild eyes darting from the officers to Larry, then spat on the ground in a final burst of defiance. "You people are insane," he muttered, grasping for a defense. "I'll file a complaint. Assault, battery, everything." But the lead officer, calm and unshaken, shut him down cold. "You just attacked a veteran in front of witnesses. You assaulted him first. Let's have a little talk about that." The American's voice faltered. "He got in my way, defending that guard who didn't even move." But his excuses crumbled as tourists stepped forward, phones in hand, offering footage that captured every second of his aggression. Larry, chest still heaving from the fight, stepped back, letting the law take over, his pulse slowing as he forced himself to stay composed. The officers escorted the grumbling American aside, away from the guard who resumed his post as if nothing had happened, while the crowd exhaled in collective relief. Some murmured in awe at Larry's restraint. Did you see how calm he was? While others shook their heads at the tourist, now outnumbered by authority and the silent disapproval of 100 onlookers. In the corner of his eye, Larry caught a subtle shift in the guard's stance. A flicker so small only a soldier would notice. A wordless nod of respect. The police spent minutes gathering statements, the video evidence piling up like bricks in a wall the American couldn't climb. Before leading him away, an officer approached Larry with a polite nod. "We might need a formal statement, sir. Thank you for staying calm." Larry nodded back. "Yes, officer, I'll do what's required." His quiet dignity earning soft claps from the crowd. Justice had prevailed, not with fanfare, but with the steady hand of law and the weight of truth, leaving the courtyard to its peace and Larry to a hard-earned moment of pride. As the echoes of the morning's turmoil faded from Buckingham Palace's courtyard, a profound stillness settled over the stone plaza, as if the very air recognized what had transpired. The royal guards, resplendent in their scarlet tunics and bearskin hats, stood unmoved, embodying a tradition that stretched back centuries, a silent tribute to honor, duty, and resilience. Earlier, that sanctity had been tested by a brash American tourist, his leather jacket and loud taunts a jarring intrusion as he mocked their stillness and threw a punch at Larry Hayes, a British veteran who dared to defend their dignity. Larry, in his late 50s, with a plain brown jacket bearing subtle military patches, hadn't sought the spotlight. He'd come to reflect on his own service, to feel the pull of memories from his days as a recruit on those same grounds. Yet when the Americans' disrespect turned physical, Larry's disciplined response, subduing him with a swift takedown, proved that honor wasn't just a relic of the past but a living force. The police had hauled the tourist away, his claims of victimhood drowned by video evidence from the crowd, leaving Larry bruised but resolute. As he steadied himself, ribs aching from an elbow strike, he glanced at the guard he'd protected. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, a soldier's understanding. No words needed, and Larry offered a faint salute, whispering, "No disrespect under my watch." That gesture, small yet weighty, sealed the triumph of tradition over chaos. The crowd dispersed, some whispering thanks, others replaying the scene on their phones. But for those who'd witnessed it, the day was transformed. They'd seen arrogance buckle under restraint, fury bow to composure, and a veteran's quiet stand reaffirmed the value of what the guards represented. Later at home with a cup of tea, Larry winced as he shifted his sore shoulder, the news silent about the minor incident in a city full of stories. Yet in his living room's hush, a contentment settled. He'd stood for something bigger, a thread of duty woven through his military past into that moment. The guard's unwavering stance lingered in his mind, a marvel of dedication that mirrored the best lessons of his career. Sometimes resolve speaks louder than words. The American might face a fine or a warning, perhaps even a flicker of shame, but Larry hoped it'd teach him that disrespect has consequences. As night fell over London, city lights flickering beyond his window, Larry pressed a hand to his aching side. The pain, a fair trade for doing right. Honor for him and the guard wasn't just a word, it was a way of life as vital as breath. For the tourists who'd seen it unfold, it wasn't just another day at the palace. It was a reminder that tradition endures when met with courage, and in a world often teetering on chaos, that lesson shone brighter than the morning sun. As we age, life teaches us that true strength isn't in loud words or rash actions, but in the calm resolve to do what's right. Like Larry Hayes, the veteran who faced down a bully at Buckingham Palace. At 50, 60, or beyond, we've seen our share of troublemakers, those who think rules don't apply. Yet Larry's story reminds us that discipline, forged through years of experience, can outshine arrogance every time. He didn't lash out, he protected honor, his own and the guards, with steady hands and a clear heart. For us, this means picking our battles wisely, standing firm when it matters, whether it's defending a neighbor's dignity or upholding a family tradition. Respect, too, isn't old-fashioned. It's timeless, a bridge between generations. And when we act with purpose, even a bruised rib or a tired shoulder becomes a badge of pride, not a burden. So next time life tests us, let's draw on that inner grit, proving that age brings not just years, but wisdom strong enough to turn chaos into peace.